Welcome to Splice. The beginning of, I guess, our fall series. Not really fall, is it, right? August? They say it's fall semester, but it's still fucking summer, isn't it? It's hot as fuck out here, but it feels good in here tonight. We have two excellent poets for you tonight, Jesse and Kristi. Jesse's going to be up first. And to introduce Jesse, we'll have Rodrigo coming up and read his delightful introduction. Come on in.
Of course, I printed my introduction out in 12-point font, which I haven't been able to see since 1987. Jesse DeLong. If you think about it, the notion of natura, as in Lucretius' De Rerum Natura, is a peculiar concept that aims to encompass everything that is deemed not to be of the human realm, but something outside of it in its totality. You know, nature poetry. This is not a small problematic. There's no word in Hopi or Nawa or Kichimaya that means nature. Much like there's no realm in those languages that equals the notion of animalia. There's creatures with names and characteristics, symbolic and spiritual, but no animals, no animal poetry per se. But because of this Roman legacy, everybody here is Romanized through a Norman French incursion into this Saxon-Germanic language, we normally think through the philosophical and literary fields of animalia and natura, even when we're being very targeted about a plant or forest or beaver or spider. But what if we were to forego for a while this categoric thinking? What would that look like? What would that sound like in terms of scientific writing or in a Sunday article, say like in the New Yorker? It would likely be total babble. Those genres can't handle categorical suspension. Poetry can, though. And that's where we catch wild rides without training wheels. That's where we need to traverse over terrains to get us to places we've truly never been. And that is what Jesse DeLong's poetry does. Jesse DeLong's The Amateur Scientist Notebook is a luminous exploration of living phenomenon that precisely does not cavort with ancient Roman stonework of meaning-making, nor the Enlightenment's forced marriage of empiricism and poetry, like Wordsworth. DeLong's poetry does not, like Blake or Henry Vaughan, assert a cosmos through a leaf. That's, again, natura. So what the heck does DeLong's poetry do then? His poetry works at the nexi, the cut points between empirical observation, lyrical mysticism, and ecological witness without giving into any of those as creeds or standpoints. Jesse rides raw, no saddle. His poetics is a cartography of transience. Ian Lockerbie and Cameron Lovejoy do something similar. Jesse works phosphorescence, vanishing coastlines, the quantum sublime where love and thermodynamics intersect. But there's people too. His poetic memory is active at all times, never forgetting family, their voices, their observations, and his friends and paramours. There's actually much glue to this poetry. There's strong doses of humanitas to it all. Adding to the mix is a Southern Gothic vibe, swamp Gothic. There's a pulse and hum to Jesse's work that creates a sort of vibe that would unsettle a Manhattan cheese and wine affair in Tribeca. What I admire most about his work is its devotion to creating ecosystems of meaning that support life and indeed death and hard-won life again. This writing has nothing to do with rhetorical contest. Though Jesse's poetry is very minutely detailed, miniaturist even, in the end, it requires a symphonic suite to appreciate it. That is, it requires a real sit-down, a solid 20 to 30 minutes of it. So we're super excited to give it a go here at Splice. Jesse DeLong works as an assistant director of creating writing at Louisiana State University. He's the author of The Amateur Scientist Notebook and The Vinegar in Our Hearts. Other work has appeared in Colorado Review, Mid-American Review, and Typo, as well as in the anthologies Best New Poets 2011 and Feast, Poetry and Recipes for a Full Seating at Dinner. Please welcome Jesse DeLong.
Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks Kristi for reading with me, and for Splice for putting this on. I'm going to read from my first book, The Amateur Scientist Notebook. When it came out, it was during the pandemic, and I didn't really have a good hello to this book. I had a Zoom opening and stuff like that. And my next book's coming out in January, so I just wanted to use this space to sort of give this book a nice little farewell that it deserves. So I'll just be reading from it. The only thing you need to know about this first poem is that the speaker in the poem is continuously interrupting himself and then starting back over from where he interrupted himself. So if you hear those sort of jarring shifts, that's what's going on. Floor it as water. Crisp in the lungs, autumn then is a breath held. Stems begin to brittle, birds forage for seeds. Coyote bones, white waste on the river's red bank. Broadcasts lost in snow, we drive the interstate where time is suspended between long purple shadows, and morning when the birds bleat. Sleeping, and the warmth of your breath gathers on glass. When I stir, you smile, staring to where fronds of headlights are guiding us home. The gap between pure white and pure black, the axis our bodies rotate. When I turn, your eyes are closed. Scribbled in fog is the word we. What is a bone bleached in river light if I am always restless and restless enough to scavenge? A chickadee sings somewhere in the snow-covered trees, its voice a whistle and whistle's echo. The moth dead on the windowsill for days. For those who tire to scrape throats through frost. Snow sloshes the lawn, pebbles, mud, and ice chunks. A sparrow docks on the fence post, ruffles water from wings. Ah, the sun again. I light near the globe you gifted me during a softer winter. The glass is chipped and eclipses a ring on the windowsill's dry wood. In stained fingers, sky mirrors on the crest of the globe. Clouds swelled. The bird shadows its wings upside down in departure. Dusk in a tree. Slowly, slowly. The sky an ice-stilled atom where a brown bat squeals, ultrasonic in the cooling air. I want to pronounce the distance, rattle the treble point where space and time collide. Materials of lung and liver etched in this layer where one is one and once lost in one. Where one is once here and there. The imprint our bodies make on autumn and after. Past the globe, land emerges in chalk lines, a spine of hills narrowing to knuckles, ridges sharpened where the sky has lit its paper ends. If only our rituals really nourished us. Near the river dawn, I tender, as if anything more, the coyote rib. Morning slates on pebbles, the current disassembles the sun. Road lights, the only sound in the room. The curtains could be the northern lights, the carpet a tar pit. This is the void I willingly enter every day. I cross my arms, rest my hands at my shoulders, fingers spread. I take a step back, a step forward, a step back and to the side. Some ants march from a fallen tree to where an apple core browns on weeds. The hunger goes on and on like this, an animal knowing from which flares of love you feed. This next poem I'm going to read is selections from a serial poem, so I'm going to read 3 of the poems in the series. It's called Experiments in the Field of Light. Song Unending. Moonlight opens on floral sheets where your body should be. smells of wet wood, sleep sweat, the dust of curtains. I step on the porch where it is midnight or sometime after. Sky mildews, skin is sticky and cooling. Something I cannot see, maybe you, is making noises, a scrapping sound, a rummage. I point the flashlight into the fog. Its light births successively on every molecule until, in a flutter, your silhouette, a woman pretty enough to make the birds shut up, flickers towards me. Every moment is light particle by light particle reborn. Participants of light and shadow. I listen as you exhale into the whine of the ceiling fan. Around us, the house is dark and slow. I rise, air snaps my skin. A tire fire controls the horizon, colored as tin sheeting left to rust in rain light. I feel another man orbiting me, a flickering white phosphor of a man, a projection of myself, strained and semi-transparent. I watch the man sit up in bed. He leans over where your face is exposed to the ceiling. He draws the covers back over your shoulders, and you startle and breathe into the dust lamp. When you turn over, the man rises and walks towards me. I feel a steel ball of light thud on my lungs. We step to the sill and look out to where the tire fire has begun to smolder. Orion scratches, stuttering out of view. As I return to bed, the man wavers in and out of me. A whirl of dust connects with a wooden blade above us. Light withdraws. Because my side of the sheet has lost light's warmth, I scoot close, press my stomach to your spine. We share what makes us visible. A lot of the work in this book also sort of comes off visually, and while I was writing it, I was pulling a lot of like scientific charts and graphs and stuff like that and reappropriating them into poems. And I wanted you to see what one of those looks like, so I have one chart, number one. And also I've been having like a little bit of problems with my vocal cords, so I can't read for 25 minutes straight. So it's gonna just, I got a video that can show you the graph. Occurrence of phosphorus intermediates in florets. Where observed, potato tubers, oat seedlings. Intermediates, irises uprooted. Train light digging up what lies ahead. Florets, reference of. My father cleft his hands into the soil. It was noon, 1975. He'd ridden on a train for 4 hours and walked a dirt road home. Irises picketed along the ditch. The sun pressed a sack of oats on his shoulders. Wounded by his fingers, earth emitted the pheromones of a horse after its rider first settles into saddle. From the dirt, he removed a tuber and held it like he would the weight of his son's head. He placed the tuber in the center of his kitchen table beside a horsetail braid of irises. As he walked towards the barn, his path cleft through the clover field. Bats in the rafters. Sunlight sporing through the stable's slats, oxblood color, hay dust solar is upcoming railings. From a burlap sack, he tendered oats in his palm, and the horse cleft its lips into the seedlings, my father rubbing its neck, minutes later working dirt from a potato skin under the faucet. Grapes, legume seeds, a nail arched from a long finger. My mother walked into a carpet of clover, stems arching on her ankles like purring cats. She carried grapes in an egg-white handkerchief and kneeled and set the bundle on a mat of flora, carefully stretching every corner so the handkerchief became a tablecloth and the grapes a feast. A ladybug lighted on a clover, its red body gemmed. Years earlier, while still young enough to ruby carelessly in sunlight, she ran, red earrings winged, beside a fence where grapes grew, rattling her fingers through the soft marbles of fruit. Hidden below a curtain of leaves, a nail split her thumb, the same way in the clover patch she would puncture grape skins. A single drop of blood ladybugged on a leaf. Sedum leaves, beets, spinach leaves, and petioles. The pressure of nightfall. In a meadow, my mother and old man, maybe not so old at this time, spread out a quilt and lay under the silk-screen shade of clouds. Inside the woven basket, carried like a tackle box, were beets, charred-coated in olive oil, garlic, and goat cheese. A large mason jar filled with water and a few cucumber slices for flavor. When they finished eating, he dumped his eyes like a pile of earth on her. Lying on her stomach, one leg raised, her toenails offered up the sky, and she stared at stonecrop flowers draped under the weight of last night's light rain. Certain breeds, petioles, could be mixed with kale to give the meal a taste of tea and old earth. Others could clutch lungs to rawhide, and I knew, from what she'd admitted, she carried both with her. When he was picking potatoes, she felt roots shuffling sand in her lungs, though some days, when he left for the field, 5 flowering stonecrop fingers sprouted, their stamens resting stations for ladybugs. She always wanted to, or always would be, affected by a field of different colored florets. A giant raindrop of light spelunked through the trees, irises and bluegrass and sedum leaves beaming, glass blown from a street lamp. Pea seedlings, tea leaves, trout and vegetables in green broth. In a porcelain bowl, a pile of pea pods lay like the bloated husks of mantises. Flecks earthed the rim's gloss. My parents' fingers were smeared in dirt, and they'd already filled several plastic bags full enough to balloon the linings. Through the kitchen window, sunlight on the kettle cast a caterpillar bright reflection. Anchored by spoons, tea bags soiled the water to the murk of pond silt flicked up by a trout. They fished out the tea bags and deposited them on the bank of the bowl. Sunlight gave over to more sunlight. Yesterday, at the pond's edge, I watched you strain your arms, pole bent like a rain-heavy stonecrop. When you reeled, you used the same motion as my mother stirring heated milk into tea. The trout fought hard before surrendering to the warmer flesh of my palms and must have broken the water in a similar startle as pea sprouts rupturing through soil. We lay the fish on the bank and I split its belly, later splitting pea pods, boiling them both with a handful of tea bags, eating this meal my father shared with me for a few days with you. Sunflowers, grapefruit pulp, a row of stalks laid out like railings. With your long red thumbnail, you puncture a grapefruit and unshell like strips of thick paper its peelings. The pulp, padded like the body of a caterpillar, spouts down your wrist a silken thread of juice. A tea kettle, songbirds, the sound of a train riding the acid railings of midnight, always at midnight when our thoughts first unfloor it to dream. We carry the tea and grapefruit outside. The sky is wrung gray in wind. The pines are tattered scarecrows on the horizon. The houses light up, sudden as lily pads crushed by a man wading in after a trout. We root our hands in soil, cold as a tea bag left in an empty cup. Past where the clovers quilt, our horse is eating oats in a barn, his breath rising to the plume of florets the train arrives with for us always, and always at midnight. Thanks, Sean. Simple. When I was recording that video, I was in my office and my dog was at the window and I was attentively looking out the window and I was like, oh, you better not bark. This next poem I'm going to read is another serial poem. I'm going to read a few sections of it. It's called Field Guide to the Southeastern Idaho Phosphate District. An introduction to the cycle. The southeastern corner of Idaho, just east of Soda Springs. A woman reminded me of someone I met once in the wood smoke of the patios on my uncle's property the last summer before he went to prison. Things turn sometimes, and you end up in a place you surely thought someone would be, just not yourself. Or that person is you, though you are no longer who you trained yourself to live with, and hardly recognize the expressions in the mirror. The way her gaze, your gaze, I admit, it was always you, attenuated outwards towards the junipers, though I could tell, as you fringed the hem of your sundress, that you were inside yourself, investigating, turning over and over like a water wheel, like infinity, like time, whatever it was that nourished you, a feeding. We do this to ourselves, this erudition. Years later, calmly whispering into the receiver became the same as shouting at you, heart full of wood smoke, across that field. It was a sort of loss, as if I were only remembering a conversation we'd had and needed to search it out as you'd searched out whatever it was you had to find before it, bright as decay, a reckoning, found you. Structural setting of bird and phosphor. Most field guides illustrate the events influencing a landscape, but how can we relay what needs said without sounding like we've scavenged the husk of a roadside whitetail? Do you believe, as Freud did, that we are self-destructive, acid-lined and rooted deeply beneath what we consciously perceive? To frame it this way, the senses are an illusion. We want to fuck our mothers not because they are so, but because sex is a sort of death, and how dare they create and get away with it? Or, like Skinner, do we only seek whatever gives us pleasure, a species of hedonists, no morals other than dopamine? Aren't they the same? The times you begged me, and it was a begging, to pin your wrist to the mattress, to overrule your breath with the sound of gravel. I am not who you think I am, and so I hurt you. You are not who I think you are, and so you hurt me. Like a dog salivating at the sound of a bell, I realize that when you bruised my most tender of organs, you saw me, hairy chest and stench of dick, as I saw myself, and I was happy. We called this a history of intimacy and thought about it as we drove by the phosphate lines. Men emerged from Earth, wheezing because the air was too bright. They were not used to being treated this way, and drove home to their families, who glowed so white that men had to shield their eyes, sons with clean fingernails, daughters tragic enough to date boys who wanted to be minors, wives who hated hearing canaries sing because it sounded too much like their own names. Dry Valley Mine. 1. The air, sandpaper, walking through a cornfield in late autumn. 2. Hair uncombed, lips blue with sleep. You smeared the suds from your fingers on your dress and went to bed. Night, all of it. I heard you scuttling, trying to find sheets that didn't feel like a moth in the gut. I got up and turned on the lamp, its light gulping the room. When I couldn't stand the way you looked in it, I walked outside. At the fence, a caribou, fur scraggy, ribs pressing on skin, like a man trying to force his hands through. The caribou must have wanted something to hold off its hunger for sleep. Approaching it, I displayed my empty palms. I offered it what I offer you. Will you pull up number 2? So there's other sort of like visual-ish poems in the book, and I wanted you to just sort of look at another one. Simplot Smoky Canyon Mine. Sitting beside me so I would shield the smoke you threw out, or more accurately, you tested out, its weight in the air, the buoyancy of it in the smoke, a thing between us which, hovering, would either dissipate or be suspended, no possible relief. You held a glass by its bottom, the bottom squatting on your palm, as if you were balancing it, a sort of trick. The alcohol, near red under the fluorescence, swathed, teetered back and forth as we talked. Around us, the bar, its crowd, piano notes and lights, mutated, something like a nature documentary displayed in fast forward, the long process of a plant sprouting sped up so that what is most natural looks choppy and artificial. Our lives, you ask, or did I say it? Did we only acknowledge it, silently, together? Are they too much this way, this stuttering? With so many time lapses, how could we possibly come to terms with one another? Between us, a bowl of soup cools, a sprig of cilantro, muddied from steam and similar to an insect skimming the secret tension of water, floats in the middle, and neither of us wants to confess into the herb's delicate balance. Neither of us wants to overturn it. Will you just pull up the PDF? So this is the last poem I'm going to read. It's the last poem in the book. And I don't know if you can see, but it has sort of like another book page superimposed on the back of it that I was sort of reading as I was sort of getting ideas from the book. Array. For light to hold, or after. For light, silhouettes of striking to class on to us, holes who can't carry it, or after. What dust does when the curtains close. Let's renew ourselves there, that paper season of behavior, you and me husked to one another, particles of what the day likes to combust, you and me beaming under affairs of damage. DNA, disturbed in a sun splotch, carry forward, if you would, the bright wreckage of us. The street, papered in yesterday's parade of blossoms, rouses you, sleep deprived but battered by morning, to the pavement wet wrap of humidity the porch lamp left on. How many of us are useless by noon? Pupils narrowing, you turn to me and speak, no. Let's renew ourselves, or our bodies eclipsed last night's moonless emissions, a sort of ring of time never met by light, so that at that hour, any hour of dark, we appeared different. Not a shadow, but what a shadow swallows. Why else, but at this moment of blindness, would I mold the contours of my sweat to yours? If a bat, wings of stretched, veiny flesh, were to ruck up what tiny particles of appearance somehow endured the day, it could not even perceive with those burrow-born eyes that separate heat sources disrupted its sonar. Isn't that what love is? Us hungering for an indistinguishable presence in a world we will never navigate? Or is it, while still in the bat's ricocheted mapping of a half-light, to suddenly separate from who we drew our warmth for, animals confronting our own sensory competence, whether we even believe the sun is 8 light minutes from Earth? Thank you.
Keep it going for just a All right. Next up, we have Kristi Maxwell. She is the author of 9 books of poems, including Wide Ass of Night, Saturnalia Books 2025, Goners from Linden Press 2023, winner of the Wishing Jewel Prize, Realm 64 Editor's Choice for the Sawtooth Poetry Prize, and Hush Sessions Editor's Choice for the Saturnalia Books Poetry Prize. She is the Director of Creative Writing and was recently promoted to full Professor of English at University of Louisville. You'll notice I slurred that correctly. Kristi Maxwell's poetics lives in the zone of insistence and uncertainty, a music of hesitation that nonetheless composes itself with deliberation. Her lines often refuse tidy closure, a move that sits squarely in the lineage of experimental writers who argue that openness is not defect but method. As Hygienian puts it, it is form that provides an opening. This idea, form as aperture rather than container, helps explain Maxwell's technique. She sculpts constraints that invite circulation rather than lock down meaning. Maxwell's poetics work against the quiet persistence of what Alice Notley names the tyrant in The Scent of Villette, not a single figure, but a pervasive system of forms that govern life, thought, and expression. In her LA Review of Books interview, Notley explains, the tyrant is us. The tyrant is what enslaves us to our forms. The tyrant is the form of our life, the form of our politics, the form of our universities, the form of our knowledge, our thinking we know something. Alette's about the liberation of women, but it's also about the liberation of everyone. Maxwell's poems enact a related struggle. They unsettle inherited shapes, resist the comfort of closure, and test the limits of what a poem can hold. By continually re-beginning, fracturing syntax, and leaving space for the reader to co-construct meaning, her work challenges the forms that dominate not just literature, but the ways we live and think. In doing so, Maxwell's formal decisions become acts of liberation, small but pointed refusals of systems that would naturalize constraint as inevitability. Read together, these threads reveal a poetics attentive to the social and political conditions under which form is made. Maxwell's work treats the poem as an active site of negotiation, a generative instability that resists both aesthetic and ideological containment. The reader is invited not simply to receive the poem, but to inhabit its ongoingness, to participate in the continual rearticulation of its terms. In this way, Maxwell's poetics nourishes multiple futures. The result is not an answer, but a sustained invitation to dwell, where the work of liberation is inseparable from the work of making. Please welcome to the Splice stage, Kristi Maxwell.
That was a really moving introduction to both Rodrigo and to Sean for the time you put into thinking about this work. How appreciative I am both to hear it about Jesse's work and to hear it about my own work. So thank you so much for that time. I know, I know it takes some. I'm going to start today by reading a few new poems from a series I've been working on just as a daily writing practice, kind of an archive of experience, thinking about kind of the way I think of poetry primarily is that it's a habit of attention. And so it helps us better live in the world as potentially stronger citizens with a stronger ethic of care toward one another being both the human and the non-human things we live among. Scrubbed. Cut 2 stops from grief's itinerary. Funneled wine glass from a glass into wine in a bottle of wine, as if it would be something other to lose, regardless of being over it. Prophecy. Mood for once only as dark as ancient bog oak, needing no stain. In a time of an untreasured treasury, in a time of a pigeonless coup, learned to be unsurprised in time to encounter the butt-up mallard decoy bobbing in the bathroom's chlorinated sink without fear or disgust, having had to rehome myself more than once, attempted to become intimate with the end by seeking animals that hold it, spits, the capiz shell of the windowpane oyster, the triumphant ziziva, a tropical weevil, beginning with the end, ending with a start. This one actually I was excited to read because I wrote it right when I got home from the New Orleans Poetry Festival, where I had sat on a patio with some dear friends from Tucson for a dinner under the pink moon. And tonight I'm reading this to you under the blackberry moon, so it seems really like everything's coming together. Liquid IV. This has nothing to do with the IV waste that I've been seeing so much around town. Of course, the endless rain ends and ands. And, 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 stopped apologizing for my car, my lack of investment. Any of these symptoms could indicate a condition. Did not choose a hurricane, so was not made to carry it or decide where to set it down. Amidst redbud blossoms skinning up the shins, under the mountain's green knees, bent for resting, the mountain's niece, now the interstate, each adopted stretch. The pink moon was not the raw meatball one expected, sitting on the patio of an Italian restaurant, phone rearing to eat, the lens welding skewers of light. As it turns out, memorized the wrong things. Man, anticipated the future ghost tours pantoums, wrote its phantoms, was urged to use my fist when exclaiming next, carrot sticks. Amidst the more mellowed dramas, chipped nail of the heart, we returned, great as leaves. Let me have a little sip. My mouth is dry, dry, dry. Still more. It did come to me that I should, but I didn't. A technician noted the strength of my breasts, asked, "What do you do?" I said nothing about the hours of nothing. Brain-fed, meager food, body wrecked by what wrecks it. Sat at a tiki bar when a simulated tropical storm was announced, a week before a tropical storm flooded the town. Had been among the joyous, had left half a drink undrunk. "What's in my ear?" I asked him, who was looking. Ear. Learned of new wool, wondered about my own metaphorical shearing. Blew the caked espresso from the tail of the funnel filter. Balked again at genital information. Watched the coffee maker spit. It was ready, the way boxers do in their corners, in the films of boxers leaking sweat and blood, but still more full than empty, performing their readiness, if not living it. And I'm just going to read one more of these, and then I'm going to move into my book. Not in a sexual way. Favorited photos of one of two foods that poisoned me. Continued asking, what is your maypole around which all else is woven? Though in truth, likely said, around which all else spins, before thinking better of verbs. Continued to think well of revision, sunburnt skin now grayed and peeling, sun and cloth in disagreement over which has dibs on this estate of flesh. Recalled the stickers hawked at sunbed salons that themselves might best be recalled. The little long ears like scissors ajar, the body taught to be a set of holes into which animals might flee. Rabbit, rabbit. The month's trachea intubated with luck. To think the thought of bedding the sun, the bleached root of a burning passion, mind bouncing like light. And what of the bouncing mind, refusing entry, started carrying again an ID, that to skin doesn't mean to provide skin, but to take it. Verb negating a noun. I hope that you don't say farewell to your awesome book. I think we don't need to act like books have short lives. So let's give it a long life, and you keep reading from that thing. It's so good. I was lucky to get to read from my book, White Ass of Night, for the second time, at the New Orleans Poetry Festival in April. So it's very exciting to get to bring it back here and to read some things that I didn't read that time. So if you were there, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. That part will be fine. I'm going to start with the third part of a three-piece poem called They. The music would not sit in them. They were bad arenas. But is the action we want from music to sit? The rump they imagine quite courageous, leaving sketches of itself on various woods, like a lip-sticked mouth on other surfaces, a lip sticking its landing. To be without music was not to be without joy, to be without enjoyment. Besides, they were not without it, just outside it, an epidermis, the first thing that would be punctured. They were their own arrival gates, waiting for themselves to show up. But it was like them to call everything themselves after first contact, after the first wave. See, they learned something from the sound of music, if not the feel of it, impalpable penetration. Having committed to the thought, poetry is a language that squirms, they sought out the earworm, the ancient animal that knew a thing or two about lodging, about how to remain. And then I'm going to move to some of the pedestrian sonnets. The book ends with a long series of pedestrian sonnets, a form that I became familiar with through the work of Harriet Mullen, a real touchstone for me as a writer. And what you do in a pedestrian sonnet, it's again a practice of attention, a way of engaging the world, a way of being present as you're moving through the world. You walk 14 blocks, and at the end of each block, you record a line. It can be an observation, it can be a meditation, it can be an image, a question, and so on. So by the end of the 14 blocks, you have the 14 sentences that make up the pedestrian sonnet. So I wrote one of these every day for the 40 days leading up to my 40th birthday. It was fun. It was a nice little way. It was a nice little way to walk toward it. Stroll. On the wrong one. The fossil sings fa, sol, la, ti at the falls of the Ohio. A desire for ourselves to find ourselves. 2 bike locks, but neither key. An incline doing less now to one's thighs. The cottonwood seeds accumulating again, like summer snow in the path's margins. A lime green wallet on a lime green railing by a drink with a lime scissoring its rim. You'll think sexual, then question, sexual? Is an ass word a type of safe word? Someone asks, seeing the P erased from the password on the chalkboard. The basket of sweet breads photographs well, but each, and you try a bite from each, taste stale. The frequency with which impossible is inaccurate. To call it of an age, or to call it short-lived. To relish the slow poke, the science, the science, the science, the yellow brick road. Hard to catch the light going out, noticing later that it has. We find ourselves repeating the numbers. The slimming diet an eraser is intent on, despite the fashion, itself another snow. How a cut makes it seem blood's so anxious to get out. Reading the word curiously at the moment curing pops up, occurs, and a reminder, check curing garlic, may need another week. To have reservations, but where or about what, whom? The fountain with its slim fingers of water that make it look like it's scratching the sky's welts. A tree with sudsy clusters gathered on the glassy skin of its leaves. A few houses side by side with stones arranged like turkeys, or someone holding and fanning out terrible or terrific swords of light. Where the painted crayon looks like a condiment bottle, more so than a crayon. We build our kids for the future, rather than a future for our kids. He knows the yucca, I know the poppy. Dairy Dell, it turns out, short for dairy delicious. We walk through the drive-through when the walk-up window is closed. Duct tape encircling the bicep of the tree one learns is a gypsy moth caterpillar barrier, an insect a misguided artist made into a pest, carting it home like a new pigment. 8 rolled rugs set out for junk day, pattern in, but we don't stop, so we don't see the patterns. A house the color blue water never is, a flower the color of a house. To call the new cardinal a little dude doesn't seem fitting, but neither does your hand as a provisional nest, so you just go with it. Here, the porch stairs are designed to be welcoming, widening toward the road, giving the impression of open arms. And this is the final one that I'll read from this series. The thing that had changed was your decisions, paramour or paranomasia, that both speak to a doubling, to a disruption of an illusion of containment. which is to say the pun is a punk inherently in its rejection of stability, in its brazen infidelity, a marveling at displacement. And the human aspires. An account of psychic geographies, eyes best described as bulbous or as blood blisters. The ubiquity of a rice grain, that it can operate as a unit of measurement. Ideally, the hairs will be the length of a rice grain in order for the wax to attach. Pumping stations at Reservoir Park don't help with dismantling the Earth Mother metaphor. That's a long green, unlike a long face. An efficient car stops and starts and startles. An eventless countdown. Toothy shadows biting at an abstraction in the concrete. A reminder that cities become rather than are. What is the tensest tense? You compromise on a mile and he speaks the last quarter in German, you forget, again, he knows. It would have been all right to live, he says, before trailing off. A cicada shell he lobbed, still clinging to your dress. Oh, dark brooch. I'm going to end by reading a few pieces from kind of the partner series to that long series. It's called Scroll, and then this is, or that's called Stroll, and this is called Scroll. And it's a series of Instagram ekphrastic poems. I'm kind of thinking about how we internalize and consume images and then digest them partially or in full, and then how we put them back out into the world because they're embedded now in the way that we're seeing the world. That great kind of circular thing there. Okay. Among decorative crumbs, your lips match your tinted lenses. A collage in which God uses a viewfinder and trademarks an outstretched hand. The backpack creates a new animal out of your walking. In this one, a psychedelic crab and beheaded skeleton wait for an elevated train. And the sun is a morsel that tempts an ineffectual pincer. A water surface is gray like certain cooked meats. Someone is hungry. The ocean's ebb is an aging app, crepping the water's skin. It is good to be reminded that sometimes a herd of hippos is what's visible through binoculars. How to position oneself amidst those with knowledge of a couch's identity, its proper name, Chesterfield or Davenport, little d like a side view of the couch itself, pushed up against the wall of one's teeth. Sometimes we call a cage a crate and turn it into a lesson in power, romanticized by the term to tame, which sounds like a basic love, elementary French, je t'aime. A learner who takes on the name snow, whitening the field of herself. Another Monique. Elsewhere, one patterns her ravioli off of starfish, some in pasta, unable to grow itself back. The self's a greenhouse with the sprouts on different schedules. So sometimes there's lushness and at others, not so much. One must trust what the dirt might still have left to tell, its musty authority. We ask again who has it. We call again for the dirt, though we should have called to it. Outside idiom, outside for real. and I'll read 2 more from this series as a way to close. To eat Elvis, draw Elvis on a cookie, then bite. To eat eyeless men, a cartoonish submarine into which no one may fit. The image is all that needs changing. Slathered in streetlight, your painted cheek is pretty as snow. The outline you give your eye, as if it were to draft itself, an essay on seeing. The man-made lens, the whole human, in fact, man-made, inside the bright lab of another body. Unfollow the turtle onto whom has been soldered wheels. There is a carrot yet to be peeled, a carrot yet to rot, despite a name's smuggling, care, rot, a speed hump inside oneself. Get over it. To specify goldenrod or canary, to unnarrate a story, turning I into a slit other words will sew up. Healing was bound to come, its little possum nose sewing night into the field, the moon disrobed, just earlier, while I sat looking for the poem. That sounds like probably, Rodrigo, more like what happens to you, that the moon disrobes right before you sit looking for the poem, because you're such an early riser, as we learned today. Whereas the poem's like, you missed out on my disrobing by the time I get up. Okay, I'm really happy to be ending with a poem that's a set of fantasies, but that also references long red fingernails. So there's a little bit of alignment between your piece, Jesse, and the piece that I'm going to finish with here. I want to bring out the red scissors and cut 2-piece scissors out of red construction paper and add paper fasteners so the paper scissors can be made to perform the action of cutting. I want to steal pubic hair from each of my friends, to adhere to a canvas, to compose a Merkin flag, to raise on Independence Day as a reminder our country is made from exploited bodies. Yes, I will have exploited my friends. I will be culpable. I will be responsible. I will be irresponsible. I misremember a redundancy, as memory's genre is fiction, is creative nonfiction, which is a way of lodging saying in experience. Fort experience, camp experience, come, little campers, come. To misremember then is to remember. I watched the other day a video of a woman with long red nails painting the curl of a potato peel red and attaching it to a pencil sharpener, which she then inserted her finger into, so it looked as if she had mutilated her finger. Such a small costume. I wonder how many would overlook it, and if that would make her sad or frustrated, ready to make pronouncements about the quality of human attention in the 21st century. I myself am still sad, as I've been for many years, that we haven't figured out a way to apply a knowledge of taxidermy to a dream. I've invented sounds I'm unwilling to give to anything but the dream's mounted body, and am afraid now they will be lost. I imagine a beak, a red beak. Of course I would go bird with my imagining. The dream always seems to hover above us, like a thought bubble or a crude drawing of a very fat or puffy sheep. Thanks, y'all. I should also say that I brought a couple of these if you're interested in having one.
Keep it going for Kristi and Jesse. All right. Jesse, you got some books for sale back there? All right. So you know Splice is all about the poetry, right? You're here for it. We thank you for that. You thank yourselves for that in the slow doldrums of August. But it's also about the hangout here. Hang, talk to the poets, meet some people. This is part of it. This is my favorite part of it. Hanging out, getting weird with you, not ringing your knockers and shit over here, Brad. You know? I saw it earlier today in the pool.
It's an inside joke.
About to be an outside joke. We thank y'all so much for coming. Our next Splice will be September 20th. It'll be a little bit delayed. We have Summer Browning coming in to perform. And also our own resident clown, Henry Clown Camp. He's going to have his book release party. There'll be a little secret treat for everybody to put on during Henry's reading that he doesn't know about yet. I'll edit this out of the video to freak his ass out, because he deserves to be freaked out, doesn't he? Yeah, all right. Tip your bartenders, have a drink, hang out, talk, buy some books. Thank y'all for coming. Let's party.